Hi, I'm Mark Reed. Follow me as I attempt to put my new book, Impact Culture, into practice and discuss it with others taking a similar journey. You'll get tips that will help you achieve more impact from your research and stay healthy, no matter how busy you are. Rediscover your purpose. Lead from behind to empower those around you. Transform your work culture. Welcome to Season 4 of the Fast Track Impact Podcast. So this week I have a guest with me, Dr Katerina Cidlinska, who is a postdoctoral researcher at the Institute of Psychology at the Czech Academy of Sciences. And I'm really looking forward to this because I really enjoyed Katerina's most recent paper and think that it has some really deep insights that are going to be useful for many of us. Most of us at some point have had some doubts about our career, and depending on where we are in the research cycle or marking cycle or whatever else it might be, we may fantasize about other jobs we might prefer to be doing other than what we are doing right now. And of course, many of our colleagues are leaving the Academy for many good reasons. I've heard people talking recently about the Great Resignation as people come back from flexible working through COVID to careers where they now have to be in face-to-face. And for many of us, lecturing is one of those activities that we are now mandated to do face-to-face. And thinking, am I actually up for this commute, for the lack of flexibility that I've grown used to with my children, pets, work-life balance, all of these things, and thinking, maybe the time is coming to go. And if that is you, then Katerina's new paper provides a framework to start thinking about the various different reasons that people start on this exit trajectory. And it goes to a really deep level in terms of the identities that we have and how we might be able to more or less effectively pursue those identities, either within or outside the academy. And so as I dig into this, Katerina, first of all, I wonder, could you tell us a bit more about your academic disciplinary background and what led you to do this study? So welcome, Katerina.
Hello, thank you for having me here. Well, I'm a sociologist with a background in higher education studies and gender studies. And in the last 10 years, I focused in my research on academic careers, academic environment in general, especially working conditions in academia, and also on the support of early career researchers, their careers. And because of that, I started to focus also on the academic transitions or career transitions from academic careers to non-academic careers. And in 2010, when I was wondering what topic to choose for my PhD project, I just discussed it with my the then boss. And we realized that in the Czech Republic, we have no data about people who left academia, or we had some data about PhD holders, meaning like figures from some international surveys where they are, in what positions are people with PhD degree. But we don't know much about them as about people, about their professional identities, about their approach to academic work. And we were interested in that in the context of current debates in academia about excellence and the stress on the need to support only those who are excellent and to support only those who are the best. And because we were in the Center for Gender and Science, we say just, okay, hey, so there is such a lot of women at the beginning of the career. And then when you look through the academic ladder, when you go higher, they are lacking. And it looks a little bit suspicious that we support only the best ones, because it would mean that women are not among the best, which we were suspicious about, of course. We are women. And we wanted to know more about those people who are leaving, and what could it mean for academia if people with specific approach to research are leaving. So it was the beginning. In simple way, I wanted to know what kind of people are leaving academia, what kind of academics the academia loses, and what could it mean for the future academic production.
So important that we challenge these ideas of excellence and how we support our research stars or whatever else it might be, and that we think more broadly about equality, diversity, inclusion, and about the lived life trajectories that our work might be part of, and how this interacts with these systems that we've created that are often highly maladaptive when it comes to facilitating the kind of work-life balance and ability to achieve our own goals, both professionally and outside work, that I think most of us strive for. So I'm wondering if it's not too personal a question. You've written about the academic identities and trajectories of the people that you interviewed. I wonder, how would you describe your own academic identity and trajectory, and what's shaped that for you, Katerina?
Well, I have never been that kind of academic which is especially into the fundamental research. I was in applied research from the very beginning. Like I said, I started to work in academia in the Center for Gender and Science. And from the very beginning, we focused on the working conditions in academia, on gender inequalities, and we wanted to make the practice better and to use our research to make this practice better. So I always saw my research work as some kind of service work for the practice. So this is my approach to academic work. And my trajectory, well, I think that it's quite stable, because I was always a little bit activist, and I still am. So I, for example, founded a Czech Association of PhD candidates because I wanted to make the PhD training in the Czech Republic a little bit better, or not make it, but to contribute to make it better. So I always saw the connection between the academic work and the practice. But it's probably also about the discipline. I'm a social scientist, and and it's also about the topics.
Fantastic. So we're getting a sense already of the kind of findings that you've come. We've kind of alluded to this, but it'd be good to hear a bit more about the key findings from your work. And maybe it's worth starting by just summarizing some of the methods so we get a sense of where these findings have come from. So can you summarize the paper briefly for us? What are the key findings?
Well, about the method, it was really a little bit tough and funny at the beginning. And I had a good luck that I got a student grant. So I had a few money for paying the students to help me with it, because I needed to reach the people who actually left academia, which is something quite original about the paper, because usually when you look at the literature about leavings from academia, it is mostly hypothetical leaving, because current academics are asked if they consider leaving. So it is quite easy to reach them. You just send email to academic workers. But when you would like to reach people who left, it's quite difficult because there are no any lists of these people. So I asked a few students to collect for me all the email addresses of the Czech academicians. So we collected 32,000 of addresses, and I spammed them with the request that, hey, if you have around you some people who left academic work, academic career after PhD, 5 years after PhD maximum, so please send them the link to the questionnaire. So the first part of the research was quantitative. And then at the end of the questionnaire, there was that column with the request, okay, if you are if you are willing to give me more time and to have interview with me, so please leave the email address. So in this way, I collected few contacts, and then there was a lot of snowballing. And after that, I collected 45 interviews. So it was the beginning, and it was really sometimes funny, sometimes a little bit sad, because I got a lot of hate mails that it's just some crap. And if it is normal to get a PhD degree in sociology with such a stupid research, so it means something about the discipline and blah blah blah. So it was sometimes really really tough and sad. But after that, I got that sample, and I'm really, really glad that it was possible to gather people from very diverse disciplines, and I have the chance to follow the disciplinary specifics in the research. And finally, it was one of my most important findings that there are some gender and disciplinary specifics when we look at the professional identities of people who have left, and that it is connected somehow with the fact that the system of academic assessment and funding and the normative identities in academic professions work a little bit differently in social sciences and humanities on one side, and STEM field on the other side. Well, yeah, and about the findings. So as I said, that I was interested in what kind of people leave academia and what could it mean for academic production. So in that context of the stress on academic excellence, I have to say that we found in the research something what we called academic identity paradox, because even those who identify very strongly as members of academic community, who feel like academics, who are self-confident about their research and who cares about quality, and they stress the need to care for research excellence, and it is from their point of view the most important thing. Even those are leaving. But as I said, that there are gender and disciplinary differences. So we can see that there were two groups in this category of people, and the first one were men and women from various disciplines, and they were very critical about the system of academic assessment of academic work and about the funding, and they had the feeling that there is no place in the environment for doing that excellent research, because you are preoccupied with a lot of activities which you do just for their own sake, and that you cannot focus on the real academic work, and that it supports bad practices like predatory journals and citations brotherhoods and all these practices we know about. And the other group was completely different, but the outcome is the same. They left. And it was the group of women from STEM field. And they were absolutely not critical about the environment. They said that they they don't want to stay in academia because they are not able to do the science on the excellent level if they don't want to sacrifice their personal life. So they want to leave because they think that the only good way how to do the science, the only proper way and honest way, is to do it on the excellent level. And if you cannot do it anymore, it's not the good thing to stay, because otherwise you are not a good scientist and you don't support good science. So there are two groups who are stressing excellence, but the first one is saying that environment is not enabling to do an excellent science, and the other thing is saying, okay, it's possible to do it, but only when you sacrifice your life. So it's about personal priorities, and the first group think that it is more about environment. So when we think about what does it mean for academia, I would say that first, when we think about the need of diversity of academic population to enable the academic production to be much more socially responsible, because it reflects more diverse perspectives which are in society, then we see that current systems, current criteria for staying in academia doesn't mean that this is supported, and we agree with, for example, McFarlane's, who's very cautious about the problems with socialization of next generations of researchers, because if they are so socialized to this system, it means that a lot of people who don't identify with the image of academic of profession as something which means that you sacrifice your personal life and the only stress is on outcomes like articles and having more grants. It doesn't mean that we will support socially responsible and especially critical is the main thing, critical researchers and critical research. So we think that we need to not to focus only on trying to attract more talents for academia. We think that we need to stress that we need to focus also on trying to keep in academia people who really care for excellence and for quality, and now they are leaving, and especially women in STEM.
Really, so it's fascinating to hear some of the methods behind this and these findings. I was wondering how hard it was for you to get that sample. I myself, as a social scientist, have had major issues getting the samples that I want since GDPR came in, and this was an even harder one. And I'm so sorry to hear that it was even harder than that you were getting hate mail alongside that. So well done for pushing through and managing to get this research done. And some really interesting and important findings in terms of these gender biases, disciplinary biases, and the like. And I want to come back to that in a moment, if I may. But I'm also interested in this broader point that you're making, the idea that people are socialized into this stereotype of, or maybe it's not a stereotype, into this reality that you see in certain parts of the academy, that to be an academic means to do nothing else. And so in my experience, which matches up with your data, these kinds of things, that they're subcultures. They tend to operate at the scale of individual labs and research groups that have the misfortune of being led by people who are workaholics. And so in my experience, I see groups like that, and even within the same school, other groups who seem to prioritize work-life balance more effectively. And so I wonder to what extent this is a minority of leaders that are having a disproportionate impact on the disillusionment that we're currently seeing around us. And perhaps one of the first steps to creating the kind of cultures that will retain the academics who are leaving is actually to try and target some of these workaholic leaders, as much as it is to build the capacity and support for our ECRs to stay in these roles, in these jobs.
Yes, here I would like to add that those women who were in that group who had the feeling that you really need to sacrifice yourself to academic work, otherwise it's not possible to do it on the right level, on the good level. It was mainly people from biosciences, especially biochemistry. So it means the disciplines which are the fastest. So definitely it has the connection with the thing that if you are a workaholic and if you are in a very, very fast field, then of course you could be in advantage, because in such a huge competition which we have in the field, then if you work more, you have more publications, you have more grants. Of course, you have better chances to have another grants and to do your work, because you can have another funding. Like we can read in Merton, cumulative advantage works. So yeah, it's definitely the problem. But what we can do with it? Well, I think, or what I think, in especially Czech environment, where we have a big disproportion between institutional stable funding and grant funding, is that we need to make the system more stable, because if we will not a little bit decrease the competition, of course, every time the people who are workaholics will be in advantage, because they produce more. And if the competition is about competing outcomes, you have more publications, you have more grants, you will have another grant, then it's not possible to solve that problem. And it also means that there is big disproportion between the stability of people. People who are more senior have more stable contracts, and those who are junior are in a very unstable, uncertain situation, and they are dependent very much on their supervisors, on their bosses. So in this constellation, I think that it's not possible to make the environment more enabling people to have work-life balance. So I think that one of the healings is, or one of the medicines is to change the proportion of institutional and grant funding, because otherwise the competition is just devastating.
Yeah, so I want to dig into this differentiation between whose responsibility is this? Is this our own individual responsibility to curb our workaholic tendencies and deal with whatever happens to be driving that? And to what extent is it, as you're saying, the institution's responsibility to create the right kind of environment and to avoid incentives that drive the kinds of competitive advantage that then workaholics benefit from? And in particular, I'd like to zoom in to this finding about the gender bias that you saw in your work. And this is something that I see quite often in professional services. And I don't have a sample at all, so this could just be my own biased perception, potentially. But many of the colleagues that I work with in professional services, especially people in impact-related roles, were early career researchers and left to join professional services because of this conflict, this idea that it was the only way not only to get job security, but also to retain a work-life balance and not to have to make sacrifices. And I think the principles of these people are making it clear, nobody should ask me to make those kinds of principles, and some very principled, inspiring decisions that people have made to leave what they perceive as a broken system and join professional services, which is of course part of the system still, but things work very differently. It's a very different working environment. And so I wonder, to what extent do you think that it should be a person's individual responsibility? It should be the responsibility of the institution, or it should be the responsibility of society to change the way in which we work, so people don't feel that they have to make the choice between personal and work life, and to try and then hopefully make academia a more attractive place for women.
Well, I definitely agree that it's also the responsibility of institutions. Of course, it's responsibility of individuals too. It's about my own boundaries and about my time management and all this stuff. But I'm still working in some structure, and there are structural barriers for my horizons, how to do the things. So I think that we need to admit that these structures have the real impact on careers of people, and that it causes gender inequalities. And if we want to have more women, to keep more women in academia, we need to change these structures, because otherwise it's not possible to keep them. So we saw it, for example, in the Czech Republic, where all these changes of the system, of the assessment of academic work and funding, it started quite a short time ago if you compare it with Great Britain, for example. So it's like a little bit more than a decade. And we see that from the start of these changes, the disproportion between the numbers of women who are qualified for academic work, so it means they have PhD degree, and those who actually stays in the system, it started to be increasing gap between these numbers. So these structural changes really make it more difficult for women to stay in academia. And these structures are made by people, so people can change them too, of course. It was interesting and sometimes funny when we did a research in Czech Academia among people who are in decision-making positions, and we asked them if they think that the criteria for academic careers and the career ladders and all these things should reflect the personal life of people. And they said, okay, no, of course, it has nothing to do with your personal life. And then we asked them if their working life was somehow influenced by their personal life, by having children. And they said, because it was mostly men, they said, no, because this burden was on my wife. And we said, yeah, hey. And that is what we thought when we say, okay, could we reflect it a little bit in the career ladders and in the criteria for having associate professorship or professorship. But I have to say something positive, that it started to change. And for example, at many Czech universities now, they started to have a little bit softer criteria for associate professorships if you were on parent leave, if you have small children, and they reflect that if you are a woman, you have bigger problem to go for long-term academic mobility for years, because, for example, your husband is not willing to left his job, his career. So it started to change a little bit, and I hope that we will see.
There is hope.
Yes.
And increasingly we're seeing similar things in the UK and elsewhere internationally, levelling that playing field to an extent, but clearly more work to be done. I wonder if I can focus for a moment on impact, because, and correct me if I'm wrong here, I'm reading what you've written about as humanism in your paper as kind of impact based on how you've defined that. And in two of the four trajectories that you identified, impact, if we agree we are talking about the same thing, plays a really important role in people's decision to leave the academy. And it also forms a big part of their post-academic identities very often. And so it is this desire to really actually make a difference that seems to be contributing to the disillusionment of many of those who end up leaving, because the academy encourages meaningless metrics over actual impact. And there's this sense that I'm doing all of this stuff to just meet certain notional criteria to keep the bean counters happy and such like. At the same time, others left academia to pursue careers in their fields that were more likely to actually make a difference and bring them meaning. So, for example, I'm still an environmental scientist, but now I'm working in policy or in industry. And so I wonder, to what extent do you think that building healthy impact cultures and resourcing these properly might enable early career researchers to find enough meaning when it comes to impact, which is, for many of us, the focus, the purpose for which we do what we do, but find enough of that to remain in academia?
But I think that it could really help because many people are really interested when they start their PhD study. They are usually very idealistic about how the academia works and about their research, and they want to do it properly. And if they have a chance to do it properly, and if they have good luck being in a workplace where it is possible to focus on research properly, they usually keep their enthusiasm and they stay. And there are the workplaces like that, of course. But we see that the systematic problems are impacting the whole environment. And you have few islands, but in general, it's really problematic. So if you could do the research on the level which you think it's the right thing, and you can focus on research, and you aren't preoccupied with the other activities like hunting for money and paperwork, so then it really helps to keep the enthusiasm of people and their willingness to stay in academia.
Yeah, a meta impact of impact, potentially. So one final question. I think that the narrative around academic inadequacy in the last trajectory that you identified in the paper is something that I know resonates with me. I think it will resonate with a lot of people listening. One of your interviewees who became an IT program said, I'm going to quote from your paper here, he said, our workplace hosted the top scientists in the field, people who had proved the most fundamental statements in math. You meet these great minds and you say to yourself, if I were like them, I would stay. And I think that the majority of academics that I work with experience imposter syndrome at some point, quite often, quite regularly. I certainly do. It often gets worse when people get made professors, but it's just not something that we typically talk about.
And any other tools,
and so I wonder, do you think that maybe training
more
or
like
coaching
part of academic
to tackle
community
issues like
and like
imposter
members who
syndrome,
can
such
really
as this
contribute
new
to
IT program that was
something bigger,
might have
can
enabled
really help. But on the
someone
other
like
side,
them or the
especially
other
this guy
early career researchers
with
in your
this
group to have remained
quotation,
in academia.
it was someone who, in which case it would not work, I think, because it was someone who during the PhD study realized that their strengths and weaknesses are somewhere else, and he can use his skills somewhere else where it will be much easier for him to have successful career and to have good work-life balance and better money, of course, IT programmer. So in this case, it was more like a happy story because he said, okay, so I tried, I really enjoy it, but at the end, if I really want to be somewhere where I feel confident and where I feel that I can really contribute to my profession and to do it properly, so then my place is somewhere else. So yeah, in some cases, definitely it will help. Imposter syndrome is a big problem in academic environment, but in some cases, it was really happy story.
Yeah, that's nice. And I think it challenges my own assumptions here. Just because I suffer from imposter syndrome doesn't mean that that was what was necessarily going on. And I think there's a humility in understanding and having an honest appreciation of your own strengths and weaknesses. And where there is a mismatch to your career, finding a career that better matches your strengths and weaknesses so you can play to your strengths and aren't constantly reminded by your weaknesses. And certainly the ways in which I have morphed my own academic career has been all about that. And in some careers, academic trajectories, it is easier to morph your own career around your strengths and weaknesses than it is in others. And so that does make sense. And it's really nice to end with that happy story. And my hope is that the majority of the people in your sample were indeed happy to have made that move out. And I think part of this is then about having the courage and the conviction to say, no, this is not right for me. I know my wife, when she left medicine, lots of people told her, what a waste. You've spent 5 years training, you've got almost up to being a consultant, and then you leave. And she was like, it's not a waste. If I don't want to do this anymore, it would be a waste to carry on doing something that I don't want to be doing anymore, and missing out on all of the opportunities that I can see in my local community and my children and all of that kind of stuff as well. And so whilst I've been questioning you in relation to, well, what can we do to keep people in academia? And for many of us, there are really important things that we can do to help our colleagues find their niche and play to their strengths and have a really fulfilling and balanced academic career. For others, it's about actually validating and supporting people to build the skills that they need to then move into a more fulfilling career than staying in academia. So with this in mind, I wonder, what would be your messages to early career researchers who are listening to this and currently doubting their future in academia? What would you say?
Well, I would say that it's very, you need to consider it very carefully. And what I do, for example, for early career researchers are career development workshops. And during these workshops, we do something like a self-analysis of every attendant of the workshop. And we spoke about their priorities, about what they really like, what kind of working agenda they like, what kind of positions could be good for them, where they could be happy, what are the characteristics of specific working environments. So all this stuff, and we push them to have mentors, or not only mentors, but also something like consultants, contacts from every workplaces, or better to say sector or environment, where you need to have more information to decide carefully if it is something really for you. Because I absolutely don't want to push people from academia to say, okay, it's horrible here, so be happy somewhere else. Because for someone, it's definitely the right place, and they could really contribute to broadening academic knowledge and to look after the students and all this stuff. So I would really say that you need to decide it very carefully. Don't do it in a rush. And especially when you are ending your PhD study, start with this search, because postdoc stage is really quite tough. You will be very, very busy. I would say much more busy than PhD students. So start to do it last year of your PhD study or a few months before ending. And try to get as much as information as possible, because what we see is that PhD students are usually very focused on their topic, especially in STEM field. They are very their horizons are not too broad, because they are in a team, they are in one lab, and they have a lot of work in the same workplace. So they don't have imagination what could be elsewhere. So we want them to start to have this imagination.
Yeah, so really important that you're doing these workshops. Fantastic to hear this. I think it's great that you're creating the spaces, hopefully safe spaces, in which people can do this thinking. They can meet others who are thinking about this, get advice, learn from each other, and do that thinking. And as you say, some very careful thought required on these kinds of decisions. But my hope is that our conversation today will inform some of those thoughts of those who are listening. So it just remains for me to say thank you, Dr. Katerina Cidlinska, for your time and your input to today's episode and for sharing your research with the podcast audience here today. It's been a real pleasure. I hope that you have all found this as illuminating and inspiring as I have, and that this goes some way towards informing your thinking on these really tricky issues.